Woo!
Hello, friends. How are you? We are here to do our I Should Have Read That book club live show for Pride and Prejudice, the best book on the planet. Oh, you might not think so, you two, but
Hard agree right now.
I was so thrilled every single time that you said that you were reading it and that you were enjoying it.
Yeah, I feel like watching the film just really like put it in my mind, and I'm just like this new favorite, which is weird but excited.
Yeah, I didn't come around to watching any of the adaptations, so I feel like I need to do that because I liked it, but I didn't like. It's not my favorite book that I've ever read, but I was kind of expecting that anyway, just based on like the sort of things that I enjoy typically. But I feel like if I saw the film, I would, enjoy that as its own thing.
It's not taking over your life in the same way that it has for me and Shannon.
No.
I know. I feel sorry for my boyfriend because I just kept going on about it all the time, and then I was really excited because obviously we went to the wedding and I was in that kind of like lovey-dovey Pride and Prejudice mood. It was really weird.
Well, Mr. Darcy wouldn't have done that.
No.
Or maybe Mr. Darcy would have done. Mr. Bingley definitely wouldn't have done.
No.
He's a very obliging young man. But yes, we've got one person in the chat. Who is it? Like, reveal yourself. Show yourself.
Who is watching?
Comment.
I did notice earlier for the Jane Austen something. There was another live show earlier with people discussing Pride and Prejudice. So I was like, this might be a bit too much for some people.
Oh, yeah. Aha, yes, we have show. Hi.
Hello.
Lovely to have you. So should we just get straight into the questions?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Ready to go. Where did I put the question? Okay, I'm very disorganized. I'm so sorry. Okay, so as with last time, there are a few questions that are jumping ship from the Queenie live show to this one, just because they were great questions, Shannon.
Oh, thank you.
Got to keep the consistency going. So the very first question is, who was your favourite character and why? And who was your least favourite character? Dun, dun, dun.
I don't mind going first.
Yeah, okay.
I'll be honest, it was actually kind of difficult for me because I loved everyone. There's just so many, like, for different reasons. So it's just such a great, amazing, like, cast of characters. But I do have to say, after letting it sink in a little while, Elizabeth is probably my favourite. And she's probably one of my favourite characters in a classic ever. I just loved everything about her. And it didn't take me long to realize how much I liked her. So I just like how headstrong she is, how she knows what she wants, and how she stands by that, and she doesn't let anything change that, if that makes sense. So yeah, definitely one of my favorites. And I was kind of sad that I didn't read it earlier in the year, because in the mid-year freakout tag, the question about like a new favorite character, Elizabeth would have like wiped the floor with everyone else. But my least favorite character, again, it was difficult because I wouldn't say I disliked them. They were a bit annoying sometimes, but I didn't dislike them. So I would say, is it Caroline? Mr. Bingley's
Caroline
sister?
Bingley.
Yeah, she sometimes got on my nerves. Lady Catherine sometimes, but she's entertaining, so I don't want to say I dislike her.
There's also like a goals aspect of Lady Catherine, where you're just kind of like, gosh, if I'm 70 years old, I want to be as fabulous and don't care about anything.
Yeah, just like so outspoken. And also at times, I think my least favorite would probably, and I hate having to say this because I love all of the sisters for different reasons, and I loved how different they were and had such like personalities. Because at first I was like, oh my god, there's so many of them, but you know, they all stand out on their own. But yeah, Lydia, Like, I just didn't like how up herself she was and how she just thought she was like, ah. And I was like, oh, you're really annoying me. But again, it was entertaining. So, yeah.
And a major part of the plot.
Yeah.
And there's always a part of me that doesn't want to, I don't want to criticize Lydia too much because she is so young.
Yeah.
And like the difference between like Lizzie at age 20 and Jane at 20, I think Jane's meant to be 22 and Lydia is like 15, 16.
That's true.
And I just think, and I think especially with what happens at the end, like, I don't think any of that is her fault. Like, you've got Mr. Wickham, who is a lot older than she is, who has form for doing what he has done. So I'm just like, I want to take her away from him and be like, no, Lydia, no, silly girl, don't do it. But then I don't want to criticize her too much.
Yeah, it's just when she comes back to the house and the way that's when I was a bit like, no.
It's what it is every adaptation seems to have this like, I think it's in the 95 especially, where she's like, no, Jane, I go ahead of you because I'm a married woman now.
Yeah.
Lydia, you're making it really hard right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Llama mug.
Llama mug. Yeah.
Shall I go?
Go for it.
Well, so my favourite was also Lizzie for all of the reasons that Shannon gave. But I also found not as like my favourite like person, but the character that I just found really entertaining to read was their mom, Mrs. Bennet. Like some of the just so many of her lines, I was like, the fact that she could get away with saying it and just like her sort of, nature. I think there's one bit where she's like, oh, I'll just have to be contented that Jane's gonna die of a broken heart.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, yeah, she was gonna.
And then he'll be sorry.
Yeah, she was like, oh, I'll just have to take comfort from that. That's how she's gonna die. And I was like, what a nice thing to say. Yeah, so I really enjoyed her character. But my least favorite is, well, Mr. Wickham would be the standout least favorite for just the obvious reasons.
Yeah, for some weird reason, when I think about the characters, the men don't really come to mind. Like, I know they're part of the plot, but I think it's just because the women are just so great in it that I kind of forget that the men are there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree.
No, every time I read it or when I watch an adaptation, I think of the scene in Legally Blonde where Elle throws the chocolates and she's like, liar! Every single time he's on him being like, oh, my life is so hard and this is what Mr. Darcy did to me. Lies. You sit on a throne of lies. So he'd probably be my least favourite as well. And then for me, favourite, I feel like for a long time I was kind of like, because when it comes to Jane Austen, I love Emma Woodhouse as a character so much that I was kind of like, oh yeah, I do like Lizzie, but she's not as good as Emma. But when I'm reading it now, I'm like, oh, Lizzie is so great. But I think I also, it's very stereotypical to say Mr. Darcy because I just enjoy him as a character and like the little journey he goes through and how he's trying to work out how to do the right thing, but he's still got I don't think it's that I feel like a lot of people have it as him being misunderstood and like, oh, he's not actually proud. I'm like, no, he is. He absolutely is proud at the beginning and says stuff that he absolutely shouldn't say, but he does realize his mistake and he gets better. And I really like that. I like that for him. We like somebody who has character development and growth. Also, I think underrated characters from the book are the gardeners because they're so level-headed, but they can kind of see the wood for the trees, and they recognize straight away that there is something going on with Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy.
Is that the aunt and uncle?
The aunt and uncle who take her to Derbyshire. Yeah. And Mr. Darcy goes out of his way to be really nice to them, and you're just like, yes, because they're good people. Yes, they deserve this. Yeah. So now I enjoy them, and I think because of like them being there, that kind of spurred on like the more friendly relationship rather than if she wouldn't have gone to Pemberley for one thing, which wouldn't have spurred on them having to like get to know each other a bit more and be friendly. And also they're there through the whole Lydia debacle. And like keeping the secret for Darcy, but then revealing it to Elizabeth, and just they're like, they are the MVPs of this entire book. It's one of the reasons I really like. One of the reasons I really like the other Bennet sister, the Mary retelling so much, is that the gardeners have a much more prominent role in it. I'm just like, yes, because they are the best.
I know. I do also want to like honourable mention some of the sisters, because I love Jane as well. I know, isn't she just so like, oh, I just want to protect you at all costs. So it's like towards the end when, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I was just like, I just want her to be happy. And also, is it Mary, the one that the other Bennet sister is about? I just love how she's always sat there just being like, I just want to stay in and paint, play piano really badly.
Yeah, I find her very relatable.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, I want to stay and read and play my piano, and I also have people praise me for my playing and singing, even if I don't always deserve it. I want the praise. No, I do like Mary, and Jane is just like I remember seeing a Tumblr post which was like Jane Austen writing, and she's like, I'm going to make the most pretty, perfect character that everybody likes, and she's the kindest, sweetest soul, and I will name her Jane.
Yeah.
Like, that is an author move.
No, that's true. It was funny. It made me go through this phase where after I'd finished it, I was thinking, because my mum's one of 4 girls, and there is like one of my aunties is called Jane, and I was trying to picture who would be who. And like, yeah, I went through a little phase of doing that for some weird reason. But my mum would definitely be Lydia. That's all I know. The rest of them I can't really decide, but my mum would be Lydia.
What about for yourselves? Do you think there's any of them that you think you slot into?
I think a little bit of all of them at different parts of my life, you know?
Because I always find it hard when people say, like, which of the March sisters in Little Women would you be? Because I'm just like, well, there's a bit here and a bit there. I think for me personally, with the March sisters, I feel like a lot of affinity for Amy. But I also know that I'm not entirely like her, and I have the same thing with the Bennet sisters, where I'm just like, well, I see a bit of Mary in me. I see like a little tiny bit of Elizabeth. I wish I was a bit more Elizabeth than I am. But...
I think that's why I love Elizabeth so much, is because I want to be her, and I'm not.
I wish I was like as confident as she is, and like able to just say what I think. Hi, Mary.
Oh,
hello. But yeah, I wish I was as like always good-tempered and positive as Jane seems to be. But sometimes you just have moments where you're just like, for God's sake, this person. And I don't think Jane would. I think I need to have like a little wristband that says, what would Jane do?
I love that. Yeah, just like deep breaths.
But then I feel really bad for Kitty, because Kitty is just Lydia's sister. Actually, in the I don't know if you've seen the Lizzie Bennet diaries. They completely cut out. They have Mary be a cousin of they just have the Lydia character, the Elizabeth character, and the Jane character. They have Mary as a random cousin that they go to stay with, and then Kitty is literally a cat, because that's how not important to the story she is, that she can just be animal. And that's it. I felt so bad for her.
I know, because I had to, when at the beginning, thankfully, because I have this lovely book club journal, one of the things in it is characters, and for this book it was really helpful, because at the beginning I was a bit like, there's 5 sisters, how am I meant to work out who is who? And I think it was Kitty that was confusing me, because I was like, she is here, but I don't know, they don't talk about her very often.
All right. And we'd like to know from the people who are in the chat, who's your favourite and least favourite character? That was the question that we were just doing. But then I think we shall move on to question number 2, which is, what was your favourite scene, or one that left an impression on you?
I have a few. Again, I made notes, because otherwise I'll forget. it was just like, you know, the standout ones, especially when you're listening on audiobook and you're doing other things, when something happens and you're like, oh, and even though you're doing something, it like so I think the moment I realized how much I loved Elizabeth was when I think they're out walking and they bump into Darcy and Mr. Bingley. I think she's with Jane, and the path isn't long and big enough or wide enough for 4 of them. It's only big enough for 3. And so I think it's Mr. Bingley or someone says, oh, like Mr. Darcy should like stand back and walk with Elizabeth. And she literally is just like, no, you're fine. I'm just going to go in the opposite direction and walk on my own. Bye-bye. And I'm just like, yes.
I feel like I've definitely done something like that where I'd just be like, no, bye-bye.
Yeah.
And
I was just like, the sass. I love that. And then I think one of the other ones would probably have to be when Darcy proposes and she lists all of her reasons why, when she's just like, why do you think I would say yes to you when you've behaved like this and you've done this and you've done this? And I'm just like, yes. Like I don't know, there's just something about that whole scene that is just like so beautiful, seeing someone stand up for what they believe in, you know, and not just because he's got money or just because he's seen to be like Mr. Darcy or whatever. Yeah, no, I love that bit.
And it's just a bit of like a revelation for him, because I think he was so sure that she did like him, or at least would be appreciative, and then it's suddenly like, oh no.
I think what I loved the most was I kind of expected her to just say, no, don't be so ridiculous, and like walk off. I didn't expect it to be like this really long speech listing all of the reasons why. And when she lists every single one, you're like, yeah, and you're like behind her with it, and you're just like, yes. Even though you want it to happen, you know that she's right in what she's saying. So yeah, there was something else that I thought of afterwards, but I've forgotten. Oh yes, when it's kind of to do with another question, so I'm going to leave it for the other question. Yes.
Ooh, enticing.
Yes.
I feel like all of our favorite moments are going to be like Lizzie things, but my like first standout moment was definitely when she rejects what's his name, Mr.
Collins.
Yeah. That whole like speech, sort of similar to what you were saying, just with like all the reasons. Like I was like, yes, that was like when I realized that I was going to really like her, and the sort of direction that she was going in. I think that was my like number one standout moment. But then all the stuff with Lydia at the end as well, because like I feel like one of the very people who didn't I knew like Lizzie and Darcy, but that was like all that I knew about Pride and Prejudice before going into it, and I didn't realize that there was that whole other like subplot going on or was going to happen. So I think like that whole situation and sort of like the idea that like marriage isn't always this like amazing thing that sort of like brings up. I thought that was really interesting as well.
I just remembered something else because you said about the Mr. Collins proposal. Obviously, the bit when her mum goes mental at her for saying no, and then is like, "Oh, Mr. Bennet, you have to go and speak to her." Blah de blah de blah. And when he turns around and says, "Your mother would never speak to you for saying no, and I would never have spoken to you for saying yes." And I was just like, yes, we love you.
He doesn't have like I love Mr. Bennet as a character, but he doesn't have a lot of moments where he's like a standout father, but that is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Like, yes, well done, sir. Good going. No. Dropped my food on the floor. I'm so sad.
Oh no.
We're good, we're clean. Sorry. I think one of the ones I have to say, because I've made an entire book tag around this scene, is one of the scenes when Jane is ill at Netherfield and Lizzie has come to stay to look after her, and it's the whole scene where they talk about what makes an accomplished woman, And this is a scene that has just stuck in my head for so long, because they're talking about like a woman has to be accomplished at singing and drawing and dancing and modern languages and all of this stuff, and she
To
must
be
have
like a
something in her
rounded
hair.
woman. Yeah.
Yes, and her manner of walking and blah blah. And I don't know, I think I'm so used to like being in, when I was in secondary school, and like, you know, when we had to do UCAS applications and people were like, I remember people being like, you need to have like grade 8 in 2 different instruments, you need to have like all those stars, you've got to like be in a sports team, you need to do drama,
Speak a language.
you have to be like you've got to do, you know, you can't do all essay subjects or all science subjects because people won't think, because the universities won't think you're well-rounded. And it was just like this stressful, like you just get mired down with it and just be like, oh, and that's what it reminded me of, is like what that would have been back then, if you need to tick all of these boxes to be like a perfect woman.
I love the bit where she turns around and says, well, if you think that that's a well-rounded woman, like you've probably never even met one in your life.
Yeah,
because it's practically impossible for a woman to be all of those things.
But there's also a part of you that wishes that you were that person, but like when does that person sleep, quite frankly? And I do love how like she is, so it doesn't faze her, the fact that it's more like it's adding fuel to the fire of why she doesn't like him, but there's never a moment where Lizzie thinks, oh, I'm not like that, I must be a lesser person. She's just like, no, that's ridiculous.
Exactly, yeah.
Whereas like Caroline, on the other hand, there's a lot of insecurity in Caroline, and she wants to be seen that way. And she finds it like very offensive how Elizabeth is so nonchalant about it. And I think it's a great moment for all of these characters. And also for Bingley, who's just like, all women are amazing. And it's like, yes, they are. Thanks, Bing.
I'm going to have to find that tag after this, because now I'm like, yes.
So this is from our question about the favourite characters. Yes, they're so good.
They're so good.
And I think what I like about them, and it's something I'll probably talk about later, is just they're both, it's not like one of the characters is already perfect and bringing out the other one. I think a lot of the time people think of it as like Elizabeth is great and Mr. Darcy is the one who's flawed and has to change his ways, but actually there's a lot of, she has just as much Pride and Prejudice as he does, and has to come around to realizing where she was wrong about things, and that's why I like them. They bring up another joy. Yes.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Let's just add to our Wickham hate train. Love it.
One thing I didn't like about the film, though, is that he's quite attractive in the film. And I was just like, no, this is making it difficult to dislike him.
Because in real life, in the 2005 one, Keira Knightley and the guy who plays Wickham actually dated for a bit.
Oh, yeah, because I get that, because there is definitely that moment between them that you can see. There is, yeah.
But he looks too much like Orlando Bloom for my liking. Not it confuses me. It's more it confuses me because I'm such a big Pirates fan.
Yes, I think that's
I'm
where.
Just like, what? Why, sir? No, you're confusing my brain. I do love Georgiana. Oh, she's so sweet, and I wish we had a bit more of her. I feel like they built her up a little bit more, even in the adaptations, than she is actually in the book. Because she's just a very quiet character, and she's there, but I think she's got more of a presence in adaptation.
Yeah,
which
I noticed that.
Mary, which one was this?
I think that was.
Is it
about the where they're talking about a well-rounded woman?
Ah, yes. Yeah. I feel like there's other scenes that I could talk about and they're just not coming to mind, but I do love the proposal scene. It's one that's sorry, I'm not talking about the book because this is entirely a film edition. So I'm sorry for bringing it up, but I love this. I love the scene in the 2005 film where Bingley and Darcy are practicing the proposal.
Oh, that's so
It's
cute! I know, because I had to. I think I went to get tea or something, and it was still on, and I had to rewind it because I was like, "I'm sorry, this doesn't happen in the book. Like, what is
No.
going on?
But I love it as a little addition, because there's not, because it kind of bats between perspectives, but it is mainly Elizabeth. But we don't really have a lot of scenes where it's just we don't have any scenes where it's just Bingley and Darcy, and I think it's nice to see their friendship in that. Question 3, you can kind of tell that I stole some of these from like book club questions that had come up before, but I think they're good questions anyway.
I did that for my one as well. I had to Google some because I was a bit like,
I'm not creative enough to come up with ones on my own. So question number 3 is, how relevant do you think the themes of Pride and Prejudice are today? What do you think translates over to modern day, and what does not translate over to modern day?
Before I forget, so when we were talking about the favourite scenes or standout scenes,
do it.
In terms of things that don't, well, I guess it kind of both does resonate with some things that happen today and doesn't, is the bit where Elizabeth and Caroline are walking around the room. yeah. So at first I was a bit like, I'm so confused. Like, what are they doing? Because, you know, we don't do that today. But then when I realized what they were doing, and Caroline actually talks about, that they're doing it basically to show off their bodies because it looks better when they're walking and all of this. Yeah. And I'm just like, but we do, like, that does happen today as well. So it was one of those scenes where I was equally confused but also very much understood.
I think something that they do, this is the parallel that I have is to Clueless, which is a Jane Austen loose retelling, but where they get to the party in the valley, and she's like, let's take a lap around the room before we commit to a location. I'm like,
I know, that's wrong now. Okay, makes sense.
And I feel like, because maybe I don't know if that was an intentional part to like bring in from Austen, or if it was just, well, that's what people do, is they like walk around the club.
I hope it was intentional, because that's fun. Yeah. But yeah, no, I would say that some bits are still like resonate with today, in that, like, the themes of family and, like, especially the sisterly relationships, the friendships. I feel like a lot of the themes are still relevant today, compared to.
I think a lot of it is just like sort of just about like people's like natural reactions to situations, and that sort of stuff is like timeless. Like, even though the circumstances surrounding it might be slightly different because of the time, like things like what I was saying before about like Lydia and Mr. Wickham, like that's something that you can 100% see happening, not exactly the same way, but, you know, like a young naive girl and an older man, and the deceit and everything that goes on there. That's something that I think is still relevant, and the way that she acts, like Charlotte was saying, is, you know, you can definitely still imagine like 16-year-olds today acting in exactly the same way. And I think a lot of the relationships are sort of like that, and I think that's probably why, you know, it's so, well, a couple of 100 years old now, and it's still being talked about, and people still love it.
I think with I know I keep on bringing things back to adaptations, so I'm going to completely shoot myself in the foot when we actually go to the official question about adaptation. But it's one of the reasons I quite like some of the changes that they made in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries YouTube series, is what they did with Lydia to kind of update it for modern day, because I feel like a lot of things that happen in the Lydia plot just doesn't really translate. And I don't want to spoil it, what change they make with the Lydia Wickham relationship, but I think for when they put it out, it does make a lot of sense, and it kind of, to get across like the scandal of what would have been like running off to elope and then not actually go through with even doing the marriage, I think wouldn't be anything to us today, even with the age gap. But what they end up doing, I think also really highlights why the Wickham character is so awful, and how he's taking advantage of this much younger girl and manipulating her. And I think they bring it out really, really well in that series. And I don't want to, like I say, don't want to spoil it in case you want to watch it. But I think also what they do with that is with that plot is also highlighting how judgmental Lizzie is of Lydia. And I don't think that would translate as well over today as it would have done back then, because I think there are moments where there is a lot of judgment thrown at Lydia for the way that she behaves, and oh, she's so flirty and silly. And I think that series really the modern series really questions how much must that really affect Lydia as a character, and how she sees herself as part of the family. If she is taking it in, then surely it must be really hurtful to be constantly told by your father how silly you are, and by your elder sisters, who you must look up to, that you're silly and frivolous and too flirty. I don't know. I feel like that's an aspect that doesn't come over. But I think, yeah, definitely the emotions and the not judging people on your first impression of them, and getting to know people. And
yeah,
I think I always think of that. I know so many people who like would have the Mrs. Bennet reaction to a character like Mr. Darcy and be like, oh, he's such a disagreeable man, never want to see him again. But you know that there are so many people like that who do not make a good first impression. I think I'm one of those people who doesn't necessarily, especially if I was in a situation like Mr. Darcy, like being thrown into a room with a load of people, I probably too would not want to dance. I would probably stand on the side and be like, I don't dance if I could help it. Because it is awkward. And I would hope that people would like recognize that it isn't me trying to be rude. It is just me like being like, oh my gosh, so many people.
There's too much. Yeah, I was going to say one of the things I definitely think resonates with today is the Elizabeth Darcy relationship, and how it shows that it's important to, you know, kind of get to know someone more, and relationships being built on kind of like the good and bad that you bring out in each other, like the balance, you know. So that's kind of what I was thinking when I read this question. But there are obviously quite a few bits in terms of like the marriage and the wealth and things like that aren't relevant today. But then overall, it's still, there's a reason why it's so timeless. And I think it's the underlying themes and stuff that are in it as well. So
yeah, definitely. I think like what you were saying about the like judging other people as well. I think it's sort of, there's like maybe like an underlying message of you can't judge other people based on what you think is right for yourself or like your own circumstances. Like when Lizzie rejects Mr. Collins, and then her friend, whose name I can't remember because I'm so terrible at names,
Charlotte. Yeah, I knew it was C. There's too many C's. There's Carolines, there's Catherines.
When Charlotte then marries him, and Lizzie is like, what? Like, how can you be doing that? Because that isn't what she wanted for herself. I think obviously Charlotte's circumstances are like different, and she thinks that that's the right thing to do for her. And I think that although again, like that exact situation probably isn't relevant, but the sort of morals of that, I guess.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. I hadn't really thought about it that way, but I do like that. Another thing as well is obviously the strong female characters, and like I think the array of female characters in it. I think that's one of the things that why it's so relevant today, especially with women. And that's why I think I loved it so much, because especially with the sisters and the friends and everything, they're all so different, but there's something great about every single one of them. Mm-hmm. And it's just so nice to see. It's like, yes.
But they're also they do feel like real people to me. And they are flawed, and you can see their flaws, and they're not kind of like swept under the rug.
No.
Like even Jane, who seems like the most perfect person, she, because of how like reserved she is, that gets her into trouble, and means that other people are able to manipulate her and Mr. Bingley.
Yeah.
So and the narrative doesn't take away from that and just say, yeah, there's an aspect of both of them being a little bit to blame with what happened, even though it is mainly the machinations of other people. That maybe if they had been a little bit more open and honest with each other, then, you know, a good like 6 to 9 months of this story wouldn't have happened. But at the same time, you know, it's not necessarily it's not all them, and you still like them as characters, and you want them to do well, which I like. Let's just pop back to our chat. The movie is perfect. It is wonderful.
It is a very good movie. It's the way it's shot and everything is really good. It's weird because I went to go see it when it first came out with my mum, and I would have been so it was 2005, did you say?
Yes.
So I would have been in year 5 at school. So I don't know how old that is. Like 10?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think my mum maybe went to go see it because it was lauded as this really good film. And I was too young and I didn't really understand it. And my mum came out and was like, oh, I don't see what the big fuss was about. Like, no. But she's not really into things like Pride and Prejudice. So going into the film, I wasn't sure what to expect. And then I was like, this is a really good film. Like the shots and everything and where the countryside and the houses and it's just so great. So good.
Yeah, I do remember, I think I probably watched it for the first time when it just came out. And I think we got it as a VHS copy from our library, even though it was 2005 and we surely should have gone to DVDs by that point. And I remember just watching it. And I think it's just like my memory for just like your comprehension of what's happening. And like I had no context of the history and I didn't really understand the language, and just kind of watching it like, well, this is pretty, but I have no idea what's going on.
Exactly.
And then watching it, I think I must have been like 18, 19 for the second time and being like, oh, this is brilliant. How did I not understand this when I was 10? Oh. Yeah. But like it's such a weird thing of like, just I have no idea what is happening, and I remember not understanding it at all.
Yeah, same. I think I was really bored because the 10-year-old going to see Pride and Prejudice, obviously you are going to get a bit bored if you're not understanding what's going on. So I'm so glad someone else can relate to that. Yeah.
But also you can't make me choose between the 95 or the 2005. I love them both, and that is case closed. Sorry, I am really going to shoot myself in the foot with the adaptation question, but I'm happy to talk about it for ages. Hello, Shah, if you're still here. Hello. Okay. Question number 4 is about relationships in Pride and Prejudice. Which did you enjoy and which did you not like? And I am leaving it open to talk about any sort of relationship in the book, whether or not it's family, romantic, or friendship. Any that you want to highlight and talk about.
I do want to have a special mention for like the sister relationship, specifically between obviously Elizabeth and Jane. I thought was lovely, and I've realized it's a trope in books that I adore. Like every single time I read a book that's got a lovely sister like relationship in it, I'm like, great book. So obviously that was great to see. The friendship side of things again was really nice with Elizabeth and Charlotte. I think just female relationships, like in general, it was just so nice to see that, because a lot of the time, I would say that female relationships are very different to anything else. Like when I think of some of my female friendships and you explain that to someone, or when they see it and they're a bit like, oh, your relationship with this person is a bit odd. Like I remember a few times it's been like commented on that like I'm either too close to someone, or that, you know, that it's because people don't understand it. So it was nice. It was nice to see that in a book that was written so long ago as well.
And I think surely in a house with that many people, and especially 5 sisters, like there is just like that kind of bond. And I think, you know, the family, the communities are so like close knit and tied together. It's not like it, because the town is not small, but obviously a lot smaller than somewhere like London, where you might know everybody, but you don't like know everybody on that like very insular level. I always think it's interesting how the Mr. and Mrs. Bennet dynamic is done between the book and then adaptation, but it is very cold, and in the book, and it's so sad, and it's like it specifically mentioned that he married her for her beauty, and then very quickly realized that was not going to sustain a lifetime, and then very quickly just got bored of her, and I think it's so sad. So like no wonder Mrs. Bennet is the way that she is, because she isn't getting proper love from this man. As much as you can enjoy him as a character, there's a lot where I'm just like, Mr. Bennet, stop. What are you doing?
Yeah. But I feel like that makes it even more sort of ironic that she's so keen for her daughters to get married. Like any man that comes along, she's like, oh yeah, I'll marry one of my daughters.
And to push Jane on the basis of her beauty. And it's like, well, do you not realize that that was the reason that your husband picked you, and how happy do you think you are?
But then the parallel to that is that it is interesting that it is Mr. Bingley who wants, I think, Elizabeth, like when the Mr. Collins thing happens, it kind of gives this air of that he wants his daughters to marry for love and not for like the wealth and stuff, because he doesn't seem that bothered about that.
Even though he kind of should be, because it's his fault.
Yeah.
It is absolutely his fault that they are in the
they have to, or else they would have no money and all of that as well.
Hey, no. It's a character I do love, but I get very frustrated with, and I think you meant to. And just his relationships with all of the family are really interesting.
And of course, like
a very imperfect father.
Yeah, the romantic relationships as well. I know, because I would say that I'm not a big like romance fan. I'm not that into like lovey-dovey things, but this. I was like, I just want everyone to be happy, and I want them all to love each other, and So, yeah, I don't know what it did to me, but it turned me into like a really soppy person.
Because I am definitely a romance person. So I'm just like, yes, this is mother's milk. Give me all of it. This is why I read it like a billion times each year.
Yeah, I can see myself rereading it just because it gives you that like warm, happy, fuzzy feeling. And I think it's because the characters are so well rounded that you want them all to be happy, and that's why, you want their love interests and the relationships, the love relationships to work out. So yeah. And I also love Elizabeth and Darcy, like great, like relationship.
Yeah,
like great couple. Woo.
Oh no, I do like, and friends. I do think the Charlotte Elizabeth friendship is interesting. I think I think what's realistic about it is that there are moments in it where, especially when she initially accepts Mr. Collins, where their relationship does cool a bit, and they aren't talking to each other quite as often because Elizabeth just can't wrap her head around what her friend has done or what she thinks her friend has done, and she can't understand it. And I think it's like quite a natural portrayal of a friendship, and you would expect, like, if a friend were to go off and get married and live however, like a day's travel away or whatever, it wouldn't be the same thing, and the relationship would change, but the effort is still put in by Elizabeth to maintain it and to go see them and see what a friend's doing.
Yeah, no, it does. It's just reminded me actually of like an instance, or I guess it's the same with some other people, where you've had a really close friend and they start to get into a relationship and you're really worried for them because of either the way the relationship started or the things you've heard about the other person and things like that. And obviously, naturally, because you love your friend to pieces, you want it to work out for them, but at the same time you're a bit like, what are you doing? Because, you know, X, Y, and Z, like maybe this isn't the best idea. And then thankfully, like the instance that I'm thinking of, it did work out really well, and they're still together and they're both really happy and they make each other really happy. And again, it's one of those instances where there was a time when the friendship dipped because there was that kind of like friction and confrontation. But now, like, we're back to where we used to be, if that makes sense. But I think it's natural for you to worry for your friends when they get with someone that you're a bit like, no, what are you doing? So even that like resonates to modern day, which is interesting.
One of the scenes that I always think of in the book is when it's quite early on. It's after they've had the first ball in Meryton, and it's after Mr. Darcy has made the comment about her not being about Elizabeth not being handsome enough to tempt me, and Charlotte kind of makes a joke about it, and Elizabeth, in my head, the way that I'm imagining them is that it is very jokey, and it's very much like, oh, imagine Elizabeth not being handsome enough to tempt him. And Elizabeth, I imagine Elizabeth kind of reacting like, oh, woe is me. And then them kind of batting backwards and forth at the same time as Mrs. Bennet is just going off on a rant about. But I think there is like this closeness between the two of them. And also what I really like about Charlotte and Elizabeth is that, kind of like the Gardeners, Charlotte can tell that there's something going on even if Elizabeth isn't acknowledging it or hasn't realised yet. Like there are times where she does make comments like, oh, Mr. Darcy would never have come all this way just to see me. Must be you. And Elizabeth is like, what are you on about? What are you talking about? Like, I know. Yeah, I enjoy that.
Yeah, I think one thing, again, is the film showed how close they were. I think it came across a lot better for me in the film when I watched it. And it was, again, it's just so nice to see. It's just so lovely.
We love friends.
Yeah.
1 second. I am in the middle of eating. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
Give me a second. Do you have any more characters before I move on?
No.
We're covered. Because we were talking so much before about like the relationships and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So,
Okay. I'm so graceful.
Like snack time.
So, is marriage the be all and end all? What are the different marriages like that we see in Pride and Prejudice? And do we see Lizzie and Darcy and Jane and Bingley actually being happy in the future based on what we do see of marriage in the book? Because I like this question because arguably there are very few marriages in Pride and Prejudice that we see that are actually that happy. I think the only one that I can think of really is Mr. and Mrs. Gardiner.
Yeah, I was going to say.
They seem to have like a functional relationship, and everything else just seems to be a bit of a mess. Because I would hope it wouldn't be like, because I don't think, for starter, I don't think that Lydia and Wickham, I think they actually mention at the end of the book that their relationship really cools, less so from her, but Wickham very quickly realizes, oh God, this is not what I wanted.
yeah.
And that's so sad. That's so sad for Lydia, I think, more than for him.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like a cycle repeating again of
Mr. and Mrs.
Yeah.
Well, I can see Jane and Bingley happy just because they do seem to be like head over heels in love with each other, which is adorable. And with Elizabeth and Darcy, I can see them being happy, but I can see their relationship being a lot of work, if that makes sense. But they're the kind of people that would be happy to put the work in and communicate with each other, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
With like what's going wrong and what needs to change, and like, yeah, you know. So yeah, that's kind of how I see it.
I think there's an aspect for this where, like, as somebody who is not married and as somebody who has not had children, I'm like, I can't really speak for how much that really fundamentally changes a relationship, but I know that it does. And I know that every person who is sorry, I've got very distracted by you. Hello. But like every person who I know who has gotten married, had children, it has changed their relationship in some way. And I think it's in my head, like the realism in my head is like, yes, it's beautiful. They get to a beautiful place at the ending, but what happens when, you know, they are a bit older and when they've been married for a bit, had children, how is that going to impact both of them? And I think, yeah, like you say, I think Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy would have to really, they would put the work in, but they'd be push and pull, and they might be slipping back into old habits and pulling them back out. Like, can you imagine Mr. Darcy if like he had a daughter and like daughter was on the marriage market? Like, how would he behave compared to Elizabeth? Like, I feel like you'd have to be like,
yeah, no, I can't really imagine. I think it's because she's so headstrong in the book. I can't really imagine Elizabeth with children. I can't really see that motherly instinct in her. Not to say that, you know, all mothers have to have a motherly instinct, but yeah, it's difficult to picture that. But again, like I said before, I think it would be a lot of work for them. Whereas Jane and Mr. Bingley, I can easily picture them with like 5 children and them all being like, oh, I'm happy still, and like, oh, cute. And yeah. I don't know why. I don't know if it's like the personality traits that make me think that way. And I also really want to read the other Bennet sister because I want to know what happens with Mary. I just need to know.
It's good. No, I always whenever I read Pride and Prejudice spin-offs and retellings, and it's about the future, I feel like part of my ranking of how much I like them is based on how happy they let Elizabeth and Darcy be. And I won't go into it, but some of them do things that I am not happy about.
Okay. No,
I mean, if you want me to say, I will do.
Don't tell me they do Downton Abbey and do 3 seasons of making 2 people finally get together, and then
they don't do that. They don't do that.
Okay,
I'm actually rewatching this right now with my housemate, and it's taking everything for me to not be like, you don't know what's coming.
It's so annoying. I'll never get over that. See, I thought this. I'm so glad. I swore that you hated the other Bennet sister. Who is it that there's someone on BookTube that hates it?
I love the other Bennet sister.
Yeah, because I asked you if you liked it, and you said it was one of your favourite books as well.
Shall I say which one I don't like?
Yes, please.
I hate Longbourn, which is it's Pride and Prejudice told from the perspective of the servants, and it's quite a popular one. But I have so many issues with it, and one of the things is the Darcy Elizabeth portrayal, which just makes me angry. What's the historical? Is it not Longbourn?
Okay.
You know, I've gone on a couple of rants about it.
Yes.
Yeah. There's also, I think, ones that I've read Other Bennet Sister, I've read Charlotte by Helen Moffat, which is from Charlotte's perspective, and it does go a little bit further on, and then Longbourn. And yes, sliding scale of how much I
will not be reading that. I don't think.
I feel like the first chapter of Longbourn is great, and then the rest of it, I'm like, get in the bin. I don't like you.
And I think it's because one thing that doesn't really come under any of the questions that I did also want to mention was that I love how it ends, because both finishing the book or the audiobook, I was walking through town and it just ended. And I was like, what do you mean that's the end? I need more. And I don't think I realized until it got to that point how much I was loving it. And I was like, where's part 2? Like, I'm sorry, you can't just, no. And then again, watching the film, And I'm like, oh, and you get really happy and it's all really good. And then it just ends. And it's like,
No.
no.
No, I do agree, because she is talking about like, oh, they were always happy to welcome the gardeners at Pemberley. End.
Yeah. And it's just like, no.
It almost makes me justify in my head why the Americans tacked on a different ending to the 2000. Have you seen the 2005 ending, the US version?
No.
The
No.
kiss scene. You're going to
I
have
don't
to
want
look
to. I don't. Do I want to?
So
I don't like
for anybody, I don't think anybody is watching this from America, but if you are, the US obviously ends with the "You may only call me Mrs. Darcy when you're perfectly incandescently happy," and then it ends with him kissing her. That is not how the UK one ends. The UK one ends a little bit before that. It ends with Mr. Bennet saying yes, giving his blessing to them getting married, and then it ends, because I think the assumption was that UK people will understand that kissing will come later, but maybe the Americans won't. If they don't show the kissing, then the kissing didn't happen. I feel like that's quite cynical, but then also the decisions were made to call Philosopher's Stone Sorcerer's Stone because of understanding. And so I don't know. I think it's a bit of a weird choice.
I wouldn't say I dislike it. Like, I love books that end like this, that leave you wanting more. I feel like books that give you everything, and then because then you just sort of go, oh, okay, thanks, and it doesn't leave a lasting impression on you.
Think about it. Like, you can think for yourself what's going to happen.
It's like I've been meaning to do a video for ages on like books with insane endings, because it's just something that I love. And also one of our upcoming books would be featured as well, which is exciting. But I'm not going to mention that because I don't know who's reading it or who's reading it for the first time. But yeah,
this one,
not this one, the next one. Not the next one. The wait, what we're talking about? Not October, November's book that we haven't announced yet. Yeah.
Oh, yes, November's book.
Yeah.
The announcement for that is coming on Friday.
Yes.
When I've edited it.
I need to film mine, but I'm going to do that tomorrow.
I have filmed it, and it will be coming because I'm going to be on holiday, so I will have time to edit my videos. I've got a lot of videos that are filmed but not edited and uploaded. So it's fine. Anyway, finally, we are on the adaptation question, even though we've already spoken about a lot of my thoughts. But I have many thoughts about adaptations, so I can keep going. And the question is, there are so many adaptations of Pride and Prejudice, both contemporary takes and classic adaptations. And I wanted to talk about that, but also talk about and the ones that you've seen, the ones that you want to see, but also why is it that we keep on retelling Pride and Prejudice?
I don't think I've seen any adaptations. Like, I definitely haven't seen the films, but I don't think I've seen anything.
Have you seen Bridget Jones?
Exactly.
Not all of it. I've only seen a bit of it. I'm not a big film person.
That used to be me, but I've become, I think, a film person, which is strange, but I know, because I was thinking of Bridget Jones, because obviously he's called Darcy, and also he's played by the TV Mr. Darcy.
Colin Firth.
Yes.
Beautiful name.
I know. Well, yeah, so I've watched obviously the 2005 film. Love it. We'll be rewatching it. New favourite film. Obsessed. I do want to see the BBC adaptation, because BBC are amazing at adaptations. Like, some of their other adaptations are like my favourites. So like, and then there were Nana, like all of those. They're just so good at them. And my friend who got married at the weekend, her favourite adaptation of Pride and Prejudice is the BBC TV one. She said something about because of the potato scene.
The potato scene's 2005, isn't it?
Yeah, I thought it was the film.
It is my favorite line in any movie, I think, is
You're like, oh, what
superbly featured room and what excellent boiled potatoes. Many years since I've had such an exemplary, I can't even say the word, exemplary vegetable. I'm just like, yes. Every time I hear that line, it's just a very good line reading, and I enjoy it a lot.
I don't know how I'd feel about a modern version though. That's why I want to watch is it the Lizzie Bennet Diaries?
Lizzie Bennet Diaries. So that one is from 2012, 2013, and it was done by I think by the Green Brothers. They also did one of Emma called Emma Approved, which I love. I think Emma Approved is slightly better, but not everybody agrees with me on that. But I do like the different choices that they made. I think it's a very fun way to lose a few hours, which I've definitely done a lot. I've watched it a lot, but it's good fun. And there are some things where I'm like, I think because that was one of the first like YouTube series where it's like a narrative that they keep doing, and I think there are definitely like it is very like 2012, and like some of the acting is not always 100% there. In my opinion, but it is really good fun, and you can tell that they love the book and what they're adapting, and they've made a lot of like thoughtful choices about it. Sorry,
I think I watched a couple of episodes of that because I watched Carmilla, the web series for that when that was coming out, and I feel like at that time I was like, oh, I want to watch another web series, but then I never felt like a lot of commitment because there's so many episodes.
There are so many episodes. It's about 100 episodes, I think.
Yeah.
The Emma one is less. The Emma one's about 70 or so.
Oh, I don't know if I have time.
They are like 3 or 4 episodes each. So
I don't know if I've got time for that. Just seeing that just puts me off.
I think I just waste a lot of my time just watching and rewatching stuff. So there is that one. And it's updated and to like 2012, and Lizzie is like, she's in grad school. They age everybody up. Lizzie's in grad school. I think Elizabeth. Sorry. Oh, I heard playback. Oh. Jane is like an overworked retail employee who wants to work in fashion, but like never speaks up for herself. So ends up like being easily manipulated, and people take advantage of her, and you're just like, oh, poor Jane, oh, lovely Jane. And then like Lydia is like 2021 in this version, which makes things feel a little less gross and seedy, but it's still like, Lydia, you're still so young and little and impressionable. And like I said, I really like what they did with her character in the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, to kind of portray like this sister dynamic between her and Lizzie, and where Lizzie might be a bit judgmental of Lydia unnecessarily, and I like it a lot. And you actually don't see Mr. Darcy until like about 60 episodes in. Like they really build up the anticipation. They just mention him a lot, and then he's finally in, and it's like, oh my god.
Do they do that in the film as well? Not so much in it. Where do we first see him in the film? Is it at the ball?
It's at the ball.
When he walks in.
When he walks in.
Yeah. I love it when they do that. That was like one of my favorite things about the Shadow and Bone Netflix show, was that he's not in the first episode at all. Like the dark thing isn't until the second one where you see him fully. It's like, yeah,
build that and
the build up.
Other ones I've not seen. So the 95 and the 2005 are the main like straight adaptations that I've seen. I have seen bits of the 1941, which has Laurence Olivier as Mr. Darcy, and I really want to see it full because it is so funny, because they do not stick to period accurate costume at all. So I think they basically, it kind of feels like they took the costumes from Gone with the Wind and were just like, yeah, you wear that. They're in like these massive crinolines, and there is a carriage race scene just randomly in the film, and I love it. There's also, it ends with the scene when Catherine de Bourgh Lady Catherine comes around and she confronts Lizzie, and Lizzie sticks up for herself. So they kind of change it so that Lady Catherine, it turns out Mr. Darcy is behind the door, and Lady Catherine comes out and she was like, aha, I was testing you. See, Darcy, she is like a perfect wife for you because she stood up to me. And they kind of change it. And it's like, I've seen that scene and it is so funny that they do like lots of little changes like that, which I really enjoy. Obviously, Bridget Jones, which is fab.
I know, my brain, it's trying to work out like who is who.
Yeah, so they don't have the sisters, the sister element at all, but they have, obviously, they have Bridget and Mr. Darcy. You've got the Wickham character.
Is that who Hugh Grant is?
Yes, Daniel Cleaver.
Yeah.
Who you enjoy so much, but he's also the
he was
worst.
my favorite in the films, which is not good.
And obviously, like, the mother is very Mrs. Bennet. I love her.
You're trying to marry her off. Oh yeah. Oh wow.
I keep seeing posters on the tube for Pride and Prejudice brackets. Sort of.
Yeah.
I don't know what it. I'm just trying to.
I think it's meant to be like an all-female Pride and Prejudice. So I don't know.
It says a unique and audacious retelling. Men, money, and microphones will be fought over in this irreverent but affectionate all-female adaptation where the stakes couldn't be higher when it comes to romance.
Shall we go see it?
I mean, when's it on?
Hang on.
I was really worried it was when I'm on holiday and like only for a short period.
I think it's on for quite a long time.
Yes.
It's on at the Criterion, which is where Amelie was in Piccadilly.
Oh, that's just
15th of October to the 13th of February. So
book club trip.
Christmas present. Yes, please.
Yeah, let's organise.
No, because I when lockdown first started, there was a Pride and Prejudice musical, which was not this one, but they just streamed it, and it was you're like, this is like the best thing, but also the worst thing I've ever seen, because it is so cheesy, and it's a lot of it's Americans trying to do really frightfully posh British accents and kind of failing,
yeah.
And the music that they choose for it is not it's just odd choices, and the way they did Darcy, I can't even. He reminds me a lot of the guy who they got to play him. Reminds me a lot of Rufus Sewell. Have you seen The Holiday? The movie The Holiday. You know Jasper, the one that Kate Winslet's in love with, but he's getting married and he doesn't treat her very well.
No.
Anyway, he reminds me a lot of him. He looks a lot like him, and he's got like this very poppy voice, and he doesn't sing for the longest time, and then he turns to the audience and he's like, her eyes, and like talking about how obsessed he is with Elizabeth's eyes, and it's like the weirdest thing. Anyway, that's all I remember from that.
I hope
Bridget Jones. I've seen Bride and Prejudice, which is meant to be like it's directed by the same director who did Bend It Like Beckham.
Oh, is it the Bollywood one?
Yes, it's kind of. I don't know if it's like official Bollywood or if it's like it's got like Bollywood inspired.
I remember when that came out because I remember the billboards for it everywhere.
It's good fun. It's really good fun, and that one's also a bit of a musical. Just like out of nowhere, like that kind of musical where out of nowhere they just start singing and you're just like, yes, this is wonderful. What else? I've not seen Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, and I don't want to.
Oh,
I'm sure it's good fun, but I'm not a zombie person. I don't like them.
Me neither.
Even though Lena Headey is in it, who's Cersei Lannister in Game of Thrones, and she plays Lady Catherine, and I think that's cool. But I don't love her enough to want to watch zombies. Okay, that's scary. I don't like it. Do I have any other Pride and Prejudice? No, and I've done all of my book ones as well. Oh, I was going to say though, there is, I can't find it anywhere. There is a retelling of Pride and Prejudice from in the actual time period, but it's what if Elizabeth had said yes to Mr. Darcy the first time he proposed to her.
Ooh.
And it's like she says to him, she says to him that she's only marrying him because it's like the proper thing to do, but she doesn't go into the reasons that she doesn't like him. And I don't know how they spin it and what happens, but I really want to read it, but you can't find it anywhere. And I really want it. I need it in my life.
So interesting. I would read that.
Yeah. I'm like, do they still fall in love? What happens? I'm sure they do still fall in love because it's, you know,
it's them.
It's Pride and Prejudice. It's them. But they never have that big, they don't have like the big cathartic, like, this is everything I don't like about you and please change. Or does it happen really gradually and slowly? And I don't know.
I do think it's, again, one of those things where their characters are the kind of characters that they're not shy to share what they're feeling. So I think they would talk it out and work it out, you know. But now I'm going to try. I want this. I'm like,
I'll find out. Because I know Katie from Books and Things has talked about this book. So I'll try and find where she talks about it.
Cool. Because I'm like,
but
yes, this is.
I want it.
Yeah, same.
Or if somebody at the BBC wants to adapt it into a into a miniseries, then I will watch that too.
If the last adaptation was 2005, I mean, it's what, 2021? It's almost been, no, it's been a while.
I'll take it. I'll
just keep your eyes peeled.
The thing is, I always hear people saying, oh, do we need another Jane Austen retelling? Yes. I always want a Jane Austen retelling. It's the same thing with Tudors. I always hear like history people being like, oh, they always do the Tudors. Oh, it's oversaturated with the Tudors. I'm like, no, it's not. I want all the Tudors. Give me all the Tudors. Like, do more of everything else as well. Do other periods, but give me all the Tudors. I don't want that taken away. Thank you.
I feel like the Emma film showed that we need more adaptations.
What we really need, we need a good Mansfield Park, because there are 2 main versions of Mansfield Park and they are not good.
The Billie Piper one is so good. Well, when I watched it, I really liked it, but that was because I was obsessed with her. So,
well, I think the reason I don't like, I like her, but I don't like the guy they cast as Edmund is also who they cast as Mr. Elton in the BBC Emma. So I can't root for him. I find him a bit creepy because of that character. So, and the one that they got for, I think it was one from the 90s. They did a Mansfield Park in the 90s, and she is not Fanny Price's character at all. She plays her as like very like loud and opinionated, and that's not who she is. Like, and I'm like, because I think they wanted to do like a girl power, strong, independent woman, and it's like she is a strong female character, but in a different way. And she doesn't have to be loud to be strong. Don't mess Fanny Price around like this.
It's definitely the one I want to read next.
I'm so glad I've got you. But then I'm also going to be I'm going to be anxious about Mansfield Park in a different way to Pride and Prejudice, because like I feel like Pride and Prejudice, it's a safe bet that somebody's going to like it, but Mansfield Park, it can be up and down. But no, I'm interested to see what you think. See, I did have another question, which was about the title of Pride and Prejudice. And I suppose, so this is another one that came from a book club pick, which was, the book had the original working title First Impressions. And I knew this as a fact because that is a question on in University Challenge in the St. Trinian's movie.
Yeah.
Sorry. Why is Pride and Prejudice a better title? In what ways are Darcy and Elizabeth guilty of both Pride and Prejudice? And how does this drive the action of the story? That was such a book club question.
Yeah, when I first read it, I was a bit like, oh, I feel like I'm writing an English essay.
I know. But I still wanted to mention it because I do like, I like that, like what the question is getting at is like, why is it called this? You can't really do that for Queenie because Queenie is Queenie.
Yeah, I'm not very good at like delving deep into words and things. So like they both have a bit of pride and a bit of like prejudice. So I say with Elizabeth, I think her pride is like one of her best features, because she knows what like she wants and what she stands for. And then when Darcy is prejudiced towards her and her family, when she like finds out about that, and then he obviously proposes, and she explains, why would I marry you when you've been like bitching about my family, like behind my back and all of that stuff. And I think just the two themes, how they work out in the end, it kind of shows that, you know, we've talked about it before, that they just like balance each other out quite well, and they bring out the good sides of each other. So I think that like they've each got a bit too much of the other, and together it kind of like it's all balanced out quite nicely.
It's interesting actually you say that, because I don't think I've ever thought of the pride being in like a positive way, but I think you're right. Like Elizabeth does have pride in herself, and that is part of her confidence.
Yeah.
And even though she doesn't always take pride in her family, when her family are kind of threatened in this way, she's just like, hang on, you're not allowed to talk crap about my family, only I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
That's how I can read that now. No, I like that. And I think also it's a better title than First Impressions, because I think really the person who comes off worse in the first impression is Darcy.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that's the point of the book. I don't think the point is to say Darcy was in the wrong and Elizabeth was right all along, because she has to grow as well, and she has to change, because both of them show pride and prejudice at different points in their book.
Exactly. Like, as much as I do like how headstrong she is, I do think that if she continued to bulldoze that way all the way through, she would never be happy with anyone. But I think you could say that was her kind of prejudice, I guess, by being like too headstrong, that she's prejudiced against other people, by not being on the same kind of like level as her. But yeah.
I agree.
Pride and Prejudice sounds better.
It does.
It does.
Matches with Sense and Sensibility. So
That's true. You've got to like market it, and it's.
Yeah.
I think I'd heard a question. Where was I think I was listening to a podcast where they said about Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, and they were like, "Do all of Jane Austen's books do that? Do the dirt and dirt?"
Oh, so was Sense and Sensibility the first one?
That was the first one that was published.
Oh.
Yeah. I think it was Sense and Sensibility, then Pride and Prejudice, then Mansfield Park, then Emma, and then Northanger and Persuasion were posthumously.
You are correct.
Yes.
Gold star.
Yes. Or as I like to say, posthumously, because it amuses me. Yeah.
But yeah, this was one I very much enjoyed, as you can tell. New favourite. And like I've said this, I don't know if it was just Charlotte I was talking to, but I think it was what I wanted from Emma when I first read Emma last year. I was expecting to fall, because loads of people love Emma. And I enjoyed it, but I think because it's more humorous, I wasn't expecting it to be so like comedic, if that makes sense. And I kind of wanted more of like the romance side of things, and this is what it gave me. Like Pride and Prejudice did what I wanted Emma to do, so now I'm like, yay. So
I think for me, it's my favorite of the Austens. Like Emma for me is a very close second. I love Emma. Emma has a lot of my favorite things. Like I love the characters of Emma and Mr. Knightley so much. They are so like close to my heart. But I think Pride and Prejudice is a better book, because I think it's still Jane Austen, but it's like her plottiest book. Like there's the most going on, and characters are traveling here, there, and everywhere. But you've still got like enough time for these character moments, and for them to like be a bit still and just be having conversations in a room, and these conversations to be very revealing about the society that they're living in, which is what I love about Jane Austen. And you've got like all of her wittiness, you've got like her humor, and also all of these characters across the board. I love all of them, aside from Mr. Wickham, who I hate, but that's the purpose of him. Like I get enjoyment out of all of them, in a way that I don't think I do for all of the characters in other Jane Austen books. Mm-hmm. They all serve a function, and they all have something about them that I love. So no, I like it a lot.
Yeah. There was never like a dip in the story where I got bored. Whereas I think with Emma, there were some bits where I was a bit like, like trudging through a little bit.
Yeah, because Emma's a longer book. I think that and Mansfield Park are like the longest ones, and Emma is very much just, it is set in this one town, and it is mainly from Emma's perspective. I think I don't think it jumps around.
There's like one chapter from Mr. Knightley, I think.
Yes,
that's it.
Yeah. Whereas Pride and Prejudice is Jane Austen using free indirect discourse, which means that you're like jumping around. That's one of the things that it's famous for on a technical level, is that it uses that. I didn't do an English degree, so I can't really go into it, but it's like you are kind of jumping between perspectives in the same scene, is what I think that means. Tell me if I'm wrong. Which was like quite a new thing.
I didn't do English. So.
No, it's whenever I see Jane Austen mentioned, that's the thing people always mention, is she was one of the pioneering users of free indirect discourse. I'm like, okay, cool. What does that mean? I think I know what that means, but what does that mean? But yeah, whereas I don't think Emma does quite as much. And I think that's part of the fun of Emma, is that a lot of things are a shock to her. In a way that they're not necessarily to you as a reader, but you understand why she doesn't understand what's going on all of the time. Whereas I think part of the fun of Pride and Prejudice is you are jumping between, it's mainly Elizabeth, but you are getting a little bit of an insight into Mr. Darcy and what he's thinking and what other people think. And I like it. So yeah, I like this book. I really like this book. It is one of my favorite books. It makes me so happy.
Me too. I know. I'm so glad that, I don't know, I love it so much. So, yes, I'm excited to reread it. I'm excited to read more Austen. Yes.
That was really my only goal for this whole month.
Winning Austen.
And then this month, because it's October now, is the Song of Achilles. Do I have Achilles? Do I have that in my bag? I was traveling around with it today, so I'm hoping it is. Yes, it is.
I've started, and I want to read some more before I go to bed and read it more. Oh my god, it's so pretty.
It's so pretty. It's not one of the signed ones because I wasn't there in time. I pounced on it as soon as I saw that you could pre-order it, but I was too late to get a signed one because that's how quickly they went. Pretty on the inside. And it's got like a little thing. And I feel like I kind of need to read it before I go on holiday, because this is it's a hardback and that's a bit chunky for the plane. So I have until like Wednesday, Thursday to get this read. And I have read it before, but I am 64 pages off like 350 or so. So I need to do some reading.
I think it's the shortest one of our picks so far.
Is it?
Ooh. I think so. And
I mean, I have read it before, so I guess that's going to make things a bit quicker for me.
Yeah, I've started it, but
yeah. Are you both coming to it new?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Cool.
I'm quite honestly, because everyone gives it 5 stars. I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm
like
scared.
I've started. Yeah, the hype is like a lot, so I'm just a bit like.
Guys, I haven't started it yet. Who wants to bet that 3 hours before the next live show I'll be like, oh, still need to finish it.
It's got short chapters.
It does have short chapters.
I need to get of it.
It's if you were reading it from the beginning of the month, I think it's got around about like 30 odd chapters. So if you wanted to go real slow, And I mean,
wouldn't
by the
recommend
time we actually plan the live show, it'll probably be into November
it,
anyway.
especially because I'm going to be abroad for the first week of November, so we need to work out what we're doing, what I'm doing. 'Cause
31, is there another chapter? 32, 33. I think there's about 33, 34 chapters. And they're quite short.
It soon. I have actually been reading on my commute, but I just wasn't reading Pride and Prejudice, and then it got to like last week, and I was like, oh yeah,
No.
we should start that.
it's one that I want time to just binge read. It feels like a book that you could binge read. So yeah.
No, I think that's true. Because I have done that a couple of times already this year. I really like it. I really like it. I will say once we get to I was saying when I was filming my announcement video for our November December books, I was like, I swear to God, we will get to a book that I have not already read. I'm just kind of cheating at the moment, but I do know from ones that Caris has floated that I think one of them. I don't know if you're sticking to this one, but one of them I haven't read definitely.
Honestly, I can't remember what I even said now.
So who knows? Who knows?
We'll
when we get back round to mine, I will deliberately pick ones that I've not read because I feel a bit naughty.
Oh, it's fine. Next month one will be the first reread for me, and I'm excited for that.
Yay! Well, I guess that's like the fun is. Yeah. I like rereading, and I like reading classic textbooks. It makes me happy.
Cool.
We get to chat about it, and it's good.
It's so good. I've been really enjoying the live shows and the discussing books in depth because it's something that we don't get to do very often. So.
And you know that I'm always, if you have any like late night thoughts about Pride and Prejudice that just pop into your head, I am here. I feel like if you do, Caris, end up watching any of the adaptations, I'm going to be like, tell us your thoughts, please.
No, I definitely want to watch one. I had about like half an hour of the audiobook left about like 3 hours before this, and I was like, oh, I could finish it and then I could watch the film as well, but I just procrastinated, so didn't get around to it. But maybe tomorrow because I don't have any.
But you are here.
Exactly.
So that's what's important.
Been smashing it.
No.
Yay. Well, thank you so much for hosting. And we will sort out what's happening with the live show for the next one. Just because in my mind I'm getting stressed about it, but it will be fine. It may be in mid-November, but it will be here. It's fine.
Yes. November. Yes. Sorry. I was skipping ahead in my brain, and I was thinking it was December, but no. Because I've just realized whenever we do our November book, the December live show, I'm gonna either be like really stuck in like tech for My Fair Lady, or I'm gonna be actually in show week. So basically, second week of December is out. We cannot do anything then.
That's fine.
Or I will die.
That's fine. I think.
Well, no, I physically can't because I'll be in a theatre, but. So we'll work something out. It'll be fine.
Exactly. We're all busy at different times, so it's no problem.
I suppose that's why it's good that I'm rereading something for December, because then I don't have to be so panicky about, oh my God, am I going to get this book read?
But yeah, you can expect, obviously, like Charlotte said earlier, the announcement for the November and December books next Friday from myself and Charlotte, and because I don't know, obviously I know that you've moved, Caris, and you're like
Yes, I do need to. Well, I want to, like, because I didn't mean to disappear off BookTube, which I sort of have for the past couple of months. But yeah, I'm gonna try and film some videos over the next couple of weeks. So I might not do an announcement, but I will.
You're fine.
I don't think I did one for the initial book club. I was just like, I'm in a book club.
Like, hey.
I hope one of the videos is a musicals I've been seeing, off shows I've been seeing.
I know.
You seem to be having such a good time. Were you a waitress yesterday?
Yeah, I was. I can't talk about it. It was too much. Literally every emotion was felt.
Because I need to do one like that, but I don't know when I'm going to do it now before I go on. I don't think I'll be able to do it before I go on holiday because that'd be too much.
Yeah, well, I was going to do them monthly, but then I've already missed like 2 months, so I'm going to have like 14 things to talk about or something. So,
and I will watch every
part 1 and
second.
2.
Yeah, parts are probably the best idea. But yeah,
Good fun.
Yay, good fun, yay. Okay, thank you, I guess.
Sorry, I realised I have the power.
No, yeah, that's fine. No, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to take over, but yes.
No. So else, leave any of your thoughts about Pride and Prejudice in the comments, and we might respond. I'm really bad at coming back to lives, but I'm glad that you enjoyed Pride and Prejudice, and I love chatting about it. It's my favourite thing. And so we shall see you in a month or so for. Oh, hello. I'm so sorry. We're just ending. But we've had good chats about Pride and Prejudice, so so yes, and see us in November for our October pick of The Song of Achilles, and more gushing will be had, at least from my end, and we'll have to see what these two lovely ladies think about it.
Yes.
Yay!
Thank
All
you.
right, have a lovely time, and yes, goodbye.